the gift I almost gave. I ironed the dress twice. Not because it needed it, but because I needed something to do with my hands. The speech card lay untouched on the desk beside a small, neatly wrapped box, forest green paper, charcoal ribbon. The kind of wrapping that doesn't clamor for attention, but still refuses to be ignored. My name is Lauren Blake. I'm 35. I've helped land orbital relays on Mars, co-developed radiation shielding for long-range probes, and served as the youngest director of mission engineering at Orion Dynamics. But none of that mattered tonight. Tonight, I wasn't an engineer or a pioneer or a prodigy. I was just the daughter of Richard Blake. Richard Blake, who, after 43 years at the helm of Midwest Aerotech, was retiring with fanfare. A ballroom full of colleagues would raise their glasses to him with polished anecdotes and practiced laughter. And I would stand there, the youngest child, the one whose name never made it into his stories. Not the Navy son. Not the quarterback son turned contractor. Just me. He never said he was proud of me. Not once. Not in public. Maybe not even in private. I stood in front of the hotel mirror, rehearsing my speech. "Thank you for your years of service," I murmured. "And for the lessons you taught us." No. That didn't sound like me. That sounded like someone trying to keep the peace. And I wasn't even sure peace was what I came for. Behind me, the box waited. Just big enough to hold a photo frame. Just heavy enough to hurt. I had packed it the night before, uncertain if I would give it to him. Uncertain if I'd even stay long enough to find out. What do you say to a man who taught you physics and failure in the same breath? What do you say to the father who praised your brothers at every dinner table, but left you out of every toast? I wasn't here for revenge. And I wasn't here for recognition, either. I think I came because some small, stubborn part of me still wanted him to see me. And that hurt more than anything else. Because after everything, I still wanted to be seen. I grew up in Evanston, Illinois, in a red brick house where everything had its place. Shoes by the door. Elbows off the table. Emotions kept small and quiet. My father believed in order and output. He built satellites for the military, and he expected his children to orbit accordingly. Ryan, the eldest, enlisted in the Navy at 17. Jason, the golden middle child, was a high school quarterback who became a defense contractor. Their accomplishments fit cleanly into my father's world, into his tidy narratives of discipline, duty, and linear success. And then there was me. I was the quiet one. The one who preferred circuits to dolls, telescopes to tiaras. While the other girls painted their nails, I was in the garage soldering wires to breadboards, reading Carl Sagan under the covers with a flashlight. At 12, I built my first aerial drone from salvaged parts. It buzzed like a lawnmower and crashed spectacularly into the maple tree in our backyard, but it flew. I ran into the kitchen breathless, beaming. My mother clapped with delight. My father looked up from his newspaper and asked, "Did you copy that off YouTube?" He didn't mean to be cruel. He just didn't know how to see a girl doing something outside his framework. That became the blueprint of our relationship. My accomplishments were outliers, not legacy. Curiosities, not continuity. When I got accepted into MIT on a partial scholarship, he nodded like I'd told him I was changing my major to art. When I graduated summa cum laude with a double degree in aerospace engineering and applied mathematics, he sent a 3-word email. Nice. Keep pushing. No call. No card. And when I came home for dinner, no mention of it at all. Still, I tried. That's the part people don't understand. When the people you love withhold their love, you don't work less, you work harder. You overcompensate. You outdo yourself. You chase the kind of acknowledgement you may never get. So I took the job no one expected me to land, mission systems lead at Orion Dynamics. I pulled 18-hour days. I worked through holidays. I published papers, filed patents. By 31, I was the youngest woman to head an interplanetary propulsion program. But none of that would be in my father's speech tonight. He'd talk about his legacy, his company, his sons. And maybe he'd mention his daughter, if only in passing. The ballroom was as polished as I expected. Champagne flutes caught the light. Waitstaff moved like clockwork. Guests laughed too loudly, complimented too generously. And there he was, Richard Blake, in a tailored suit, smiling like someone who'd never been anything but admired. People gathered around him, each trying to shake his hand, to thank him, to remember him. I stood near the back, holding the box with both hands. It contained a photograph, one I had taken. A grainy black and white shot of us in the backyard when I was 8. He was kneeling beside me, helping me wire a broken radio. That was the one memory I had of us truly working together. It wasn't much, but it was ours. I thought about giving it to him. I thought about saying, "This is how I want to remember you." But I didn't move. Because the truth is, I wasn't sure if I wanted to remember him at all, not the version of him that never saw me fully. The speeches began. One by one, colleagues and friends stood at the microphone, offering stories of leadership, precision, brilliance. When it was my turn, I walked to the podium with the card still blank in my hand. I looked at him. Then at the crowd. "My father taught me that space is not empty," I began. "It's filled with radiation, debris, friction, forces that shape you, even if you can't see them." And so was my childhood. It was shaped by things unsaid. By expectations not spoken, but deeply felt. And still, I learned to fly. I learned to orbit. Not because I was launched, but because I refused to fall. I paused. And maybe that's his legacy, too. The parts he didn't mean to teach. The parts one had to learn anyway. Then I walked off the stage and left the gift by his seat. Whether he opened it or not, I never found out. But that night, for the first time, I saw myself. And that was enough. Every Thanksgiving. Every 4th of July. Every stiffly arranged family photo where the sun was always in someone's eyes, my father would raise a glass, chest square, voice sure. To my boys, he'd say, carrying the Blake name forward with strength and honor. And I would smile, tight, practiced, like a woman trying not to make things worse. That smile became my armor. Even Jason, who once couldn't afford grad school after a failed business venture, and whom I quietly helped cover tuition, once mocked my work. "She's in aerospace," he told a neighbor at a barbecue. "You know, the moon stuff. Government science club." They laughed. Not cruelly. Just casually. The way people laugh when they've already decided something doesn't matter. It wasn't hatred. It was dismissal. And somehow, that stung more. Not one of them knew that I'd cracked radiation shielding protocol for the first inhabited Mars transit capsule. That my equations were now part of long-duration spaceflight simulations used by agencies across 3 continents. But what do you do with that, when your family calls you smart but never calls you important? When they let you in the room but never into the story? You build. You try harder. You hope that someday they'll notice what you've become. And then, one day, you stop hoping. I arrived at the gala 15 minutes early. Not because I was eager, but because anxiety has always tricked me into overcompensating. Early is safe. Early means no entrance to perform, no awkward stares, no sudden introductions. I handed my keys to the valet. He hesitated when he saw the black Rivian SUV. Out here, electric still meant eccentric. The Midwest Aerotech Gala was hosted at a private event space on the edge of Lake Michigan. The air was crisp, the hedges trimmed, white linen tables lined in perfect rows beneath vaulted glass ceilings. Chandeliers glittered like stars caught in a net. A jazz trio played something soft and complicated in the background. Inside, a looping slideshow played on a 10-foot screen. My father shaking hands with generals. My father standing next to satellites. My father beside other executives, all in gray suits, frozen in time. Each photo was a monument to legacy. And not one included family. No Christmas mornings. No birthdays. No school plays. Just rockets. Just Richard Blake. Stoic. Polished. Alone. A waiter passed with a tray of champagne. I took a flute and sipped, not because I wanted it, but because standing empty-handed felt too exposed. Across the room, my mother caught my eye. Her wave was brief, restrained, a gesture meant for me and only me. She'd always loved from the quiet corners. Sideline hugs. Packed lunches. Soft glances when words felt too dangerous. Her affection was a whisper, never a declaration. Well, look who made it. I turned. Ryan, square-jawed, flag-pinned lapel, smiled like a man campaigning. Jason stood beside him, adjusting his cufflinks, always more comfortable with money than emotion. Lauren, Ryan said, hugging me the way people do when they know cameras are nearby. Still working with NASA or whatever? Still at Orion, I replied. We're finalizing a deep space probe this quarter. Jason grinned. The moon stuff, he said. He laughed. So did Ryan. Not out of malice, just the kind of gentle dismissal that comes from never having to understand you. You should say something tonight, Ryan added. Dad might actually tear up. I smiled, thinly. He doesn't do tears. They peeled off to greet a retired Air Force colonel. And just like that, I was 12 again. Neatly dressed. Carefully silent. Standing in a room where everyone had a place, and mine was adjacent. Behind me, the slideshow flickered to a new photo. My father standing proudly in front of a launch schematic. No family. No daughter. Just Richard Blake. Always Richard Blake. When the MC finally took the mic, the lights dimmed just enough for the voices to hush and the glasses to rise. He began with warm laughter, company milestones, a few half-funny engineering jokes that drew the right kind of polite chuckles. Then, with ceremonial flourish, he announced. Please welcome the man of the hour, Mr. Richard Blake. The applause was immediate. Confident. Reverent. My father walked to the stage like a man who had never once questioned his own footing. He adjusted the microphone. Smiled for the cameras. And began in the voice I knew too well, measured, deep, practiced. 43 years, he said, scanning the room. That's a long time to do anything, especially in a field that moves as fast as aerospace. The audience chuckled. He continued. I've had the honor of working with brilliant minds, of launching missions that mattered. And along the way, I've learned that leadership isn't just about intelligence. It's about vision. Discipline. Sacrifice. He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. Everything I built, he said, I built because I believed in order, in precision. In keeping emotion out of the equation. And there it was. His truth. Not cruel. Just absolute. He finished to another round of applause. People stood. Toasted. Laughed. And I stood there, holding the box. The gift I almost gave. Inside was the photo. The one of us in the backyard, me at 8, wiring a broken radio with his help. It was the only memory I had of him looking at me like I belonged in the story. I never gave it to him. Not because he didn't deserve it. But because I finally realized, I didn't need him to validate the story I'd written. I was already part of something bigger than his legacy. I was launching my own. The crowd leaned in as he spoke. I walked into Midwest Aerotech as a junior systems analyst in 1981, my father began. And today, I leave as CEO. He paused just long enough for the applause to roll through the room. That journey, well, I didn't walk it alone. Something in me leaned forward. I don't know why, I just did. I had partners. Mentors. Friends. But most of all, he said, voice rounding with warmth, I had family. Another polite round of applause. Glasses clinked. Heads nodded. My sons, he continued, Ryan and Jason, have carried the Blake name with strength. Ryan's time in the Navy taught us all about honor. Jason's work on our propulsion teams kept us competitive, cutting edge. He gestured toward their table. The spotlight followed. They smiled, modest, composed. Our uncle clapped with enthusiasm. A cousin snapped a photo, proud to have proof of being part of something. My father smiled. Everything I built, everything this company became, has their fingerprints on it. The applause rose again, standing, proud, thunderous. I didn't stand. He waited for the cheers to fade, then shifted his voice, the way he always did when about to say something he thought was profound. Not every child is wired the same, he said gently. And that's okay. Some paths don't follow tradition. Some talents don't translate into legacy. But every family, he paused meaningfully, has its own blueprint. It was soft. Measured. Deliberate. And it landed like a punch to the throat. He hadn't said my name. He didn't need to. People chuckled. Lightly. As if to say what a thoughtful thing to say about difference. One of his colleagues glanced at me and quickly looked away. I felt the blood drain from my hands. The champagne glass remained steady, but only because I had practiced stillness for decades. Because I knew how to disappear while standing perfectly still. My mother looked at me across the room. She didn't blink. Didn't smile. And I stood. Not fast, not dramatically. Just deliberately. I walked toward the stage. Not to the microphone. Not into the spotlight. I stopped 3 steps from the edge. The room quieted. The music dimmed into stillness. I held out the small, forest green box with both hands. Calm. Steady. From your biggest disappointment, I said. My voice didn't waver. Not once. He looked at me, his face unreadable, and reached for the box. I turned and walked away. Not rushed. Not angry. Just, done. The marble floors caught the echo of my heels as I moved through the hall. And behind me, the applause resumed, as if I hadn't happened. I didn't go straight back to the hotel. I parked at the farthest corner of the event garage, one of those dim spots people only use when they're hiding. Or hurting. I shut off the engine but didn't move. I just sat there. Hands on the wheel. Breathing slow. Not panicked. Just quiet. It felt like standing in a snowstorm you'd seen coming for years. And only now decided to stop pretending it wasn't real. My phone buzzed. Once. Then again. A text from Mom, I saw you. A message from an old college roommate, was that you? The green box? Wow. Then Jason, what was in the box? I didn't answer. Because I already knew what was happening back in that ballroom. Knew how long it would take before the curiosity got to him. My father wouldn't open it in front of anyone. He was too careful for that. Too proud. But 10 minutes, maybe less, he'd open it. Because he hated not knowing. Hated surprises more than weakness. And inside the box, tucked into black velvet lining, was a single, framed photo. I'd kept it in the back of my closet for over 20 years. Folded in cardboard. Wrapped in tissue paper yellowed at the edges. I'd nearly thrown it away a dozen times. It was taken in the spring of 1999. A local robotics fair at Evanston Middle School. I had built a functional rover prototype from salvaged electronics and lawnmower parts. It moved, turned, climbed inclines. I took first place, district-wide. My mother had begged him to come. He arrived late. Arms crossed. Phone clipped to his belt, always within reach. But something shifted that day. Maybe it was how the prototype moved. Maybe it was the way the judges leaned in to ask questions. Maybe, for 5 minutes, he forgot I wasn't Ryan or Jason. Someone had snapped the photo at just the right moment. Me, kneeling beside the rover. My father behind me, not looking away. His expression not proud, exactly. But present. Focused. Seeing me. That was the only photo I ever had where he looked at me like I was part of the legacy. And now it sat in his hands. No speech. No explanation. Just a quiet reminder of what he'd missed. I finally turned the key, backed out of the space, and pulled out into the quiet night. The road away from the lake glowed in amber and silver from the passing street lights. I thought maybe I'd cry. But I didn't. There wasn't grief in me anymore. Only clarity. Some people need a name carved into the side of a building to feel seen. Others only ever wanted a name whispered at the dinner table. I didn't need a legacy anymore. I had something better. A story I had written with my own hands. My own heart. My own mind. And in that story, I wasn't someone's disappointment. I was the author. And I was just getting started. The photo stood upright on his coffee table, uncentered, like it had been studied and then left in quiet disbelief. The image, me, holding the blue ribbon. Him, standing behind me, hand on my shoulder. Smiling. Not politely. Not for the camera. A real smile. And beneath the photo, tucked gently behind the frame, was a note in my handwriting. This was the last time you looked at me like I mattered. I spent 23 years chasing that version of you. I'm done now. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even a demand. It was a mirror. Whether he looked into it or not, that was his choice. But he couldn't say it never happened. It was almost 11 p.m. when my phone buzzed again. A text. Just 5 words. Come by. Alone. No preamble. No explanation. A command, at least, it would have been, once. Now, it felt more like a crack in the wall. A summons. I didn't decide right away. I let the message sit on my screen until it dimmed and disappeared into black. Then I started the car. The house looked the same. Brick facade. Perfect hedges. The porch light still on, just like every night of my childhood, as if constancy could replace affection. As if the rituals of home could cover over what had never been spoken. The front door was unlocked. He was in the den, his den, sitting in that old leather armchair none of us had been allowed to touch growing up. The box sat open in front of him on the coffee table. The photo stood upright. He hadn't moved it. He didn't look up when I entered. For a full minute, we said nothing. Then, without taking his eyes from the picture, he spoke. I don't remember that day. I stood across from him, arms folded. Not defensive. Just, cold. Of course you don't, I said. It wasn't important to you. That landed. Not like a slap. More like a stone dropped into still water, silent, but the ripple traveled all the way to him. He cleared his throat. You think I didn't care? I don't think, I replied. I know. He leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees. For a man who had once commanded rooms full of military engineers, he suddenly looked unsure. I pushed you, he said slowly, because I saw something in you. Something sharp. Unrelenting. No, I cut in. You pushed me away. There's a difference. He finally looked at me. Not through me. At me. You weren't like the boys. You didn't wait for permission. You didn't need approval. You questioned everything. So that made me less deserving? He hesitated. The air thickened. Then he said something I didn't expect. You reminded me of my father. That stopped me. He hated how I questioned things. Thought emotions were weakness. Said the only thing worse than a soft son was a difficult daughter. I guess. I carried that. There it was. Not an apology. Just a confession. A lineage of silence. A toxic inheritance passed down like a monogrammed suitcase no one asked for. I sat down. Not close. Just at the edge of the couch. So I spent my life being punished, I said, for a version of you that existed before I was even born. He blinked. Didn't deny it. You were never a failure, he said quietly. I just didn't know how to raise a daughter like you. You didn't try, I answered. You just ignored me until I stopped trying to be seen. Another silence. Not empty, just full of everything we never said. He picked up the photo again. Studied it. I don't remember smiling like that. I do, I said. It kept me going for years. That's a lot of pressure, for one moment. Then maybe you should have made more of them. He looked at me again, this time with something that resembled understanding. What you did tonight, he said, it made me angry. Good, I replied. That means you finally felt something. We sat there. In the room built with his success but lined with the ghosts of everything we never named. And I realized. This was as close to an apology as I'd ever get. Not because he didn't care. But because he never learned how to say the words. And suddenly. I didn't need him to. 2 weeks passed. Not with dramatic closure. Not with some sweeping cinematic moment. Just time. Time that created space. The kind of space that lets old air out of rooms. The kind that lets you breathe again. You don't realize you've been holding your breath until the moment you finally exhale. I went back to Chicago. Back to spreadsheets, orbital risk logs, 6 a.m. briefs, and systems checks. At Orion, no one asked what happened. They didn't have to. They'd seen it. A few clips from the gala had circulated, grainy, off-angle, and just long enough to capture the moment I handed him the box. The audio had cut out, but the image lingered. I looked composed. Almost serene. But if you watched closely, you could see it. A woman who wasn't walking away from family, just from pretending it wasn't broken. Then came the invitation. We'd love for you to give the closing keynote at this year's Women in Engineering Summit. You'd be the first female mission director from Orion to take that stage. I almost declined. But then I thought of her, the girl I once was. The one soldering circuits in the garage while her father watched football with her brothers. The one who turned her loneliness into invention, who rebuilt herself from discarded parts like every machine she ever loved. She would have wanted me to say yes. So I did. Under white lights in a ballroom in D.C., a different one this time, I faced rows of young women in STEM. Some in lab coats. Some in headscarves. Some in borrowed blazers with bitten fingernails and tired eyes. Some who hadn't yet learned how to take up space, and some who already did. And I told them the truth. Sometimes rockets don't fail because of heat, or fuel, or math. Sometimes, they fail in silence, when no one even sees them lift. I paused. Let it land. I spent years trying to become the kind of daughter someone like my father could be proud of. But the real shift happened when I stopped performing and started owning. You don't have to prove yourself to people who refuse to see you. A few heads nodded. A few eyes welled. Some legacies are worth breaking. And sometimes, the most revolutionary thing you can do is walk away. Not in anger. In clarity. The applause didn't matter. But the stillness after did. In that moment, I wasn't someone's daughter. I wasn't someone's disappointment. I was my own damn architect. A month later, an envelope arrived. No return address. The handwriting on the front was sharp. Angular. Familiar in the way only something long avoided can be. Inside was the same photo. The one I had given him. On the back, in neat block letters, he'd written. I didn't forget that day. I tried to. Because it scared me, how much I loved that version of you. You deserved more than I gave. I'm sorry. No signature. No love, Dad. Just that. I stared at it for a long time. Not crying. Just, still. Then I folded the photo and placed it gently in the same drawer where I used to keep every disappointing birthday card. Every half-hearted holiday note. Every apology that never came. But this time, it didn't go there as another wound. It went there as a marker of something that had finally stopped bleeding. Because healing doesn't always look like a breakthrough. Sometimes, it doesn't come in time. Sometimes, it doesn't come in the words you waited decades for. Sometimes, it only arrives after you've stopped needing it. That's what healing looks like. It's not loud. It's not cinematic. It's a Tuesday morning where you drink your coffee and don't think of him. It's a voicemail you don't feel obligated to return. It's choosing silence and realizing it doesn't mean defeat. It means peace. 3 months after the gala, I spoke at a small university near Evanston. A mentorship panel. Girls in engineering. The turnout was small, but the room felt full. Afterward, a student, no older than 19, approached me. Big glasses. Shy voice. Anxious fingers clutching her notebook. How did you know? She asked. When it was time to stop trying to win your dad's approval? I smiled. Not out of bitterness. But from a place she hadn't arrived at yet. I didn't, I said. I just woke up one day and realized. I already had mine. That night, back in my apartment, I opened a new frame. Slipped the photo inside. Hung it on the wall. Not as a plea for recognition. But as proof of everything I survived without it. Because sometimes, the greatest legacy isn't the one you're handed. It's the one you build yourself, piece by piece, when no one is watching. And sometimes, the most extraordinary launch is the one that happens quietly. Alone. And still, it soars. You don't realize you've been holding your breath until the moment you finally exhale. I went back to Chicago. Back to spreadsheets, orbital risk logs, 6 a.m. briefs, and systems checks. At Orion, no one asked what happened. They didn't have to. They'd seen it. A few clips from the gala had circulated, grainy, off-angle, and just long enough to capture the moment I handed him the box. The audio had cut out, but the image lingered. I looked composed. Almost serene. But if you watched closely, you could see it. A woman who wasn't walking away from family, just from pretending it wasn't broken. Then came the invitation. We'd love for you to give the closing keynote at this year's Women in Engineering Summit. You'd be the first female mission director from Orion to take that stage. I almost declined. But then I thought of her, the girl I once was. The one soldering circuits in the garage while her father watched football with her brothers. The one who turned her loneliness into invention, who rebuilt herself from discarded parts like every machine she ever loved. She would have wanted me to say yes. So I did. Under white lights in a ballroom in D.C., a different one this time, I faced rows of young women in STEM. Some in lab coats. Some in headscarves. Some in borrowed blazers with bitten fingernails and tired eyes. Some who hadn't yet learned how to take up space, and some who already did. And I told them the truth. Sometimes rockets don't fail because of heat, or fuel, or math. Sometimes, they fail in silence, when no one even sees them lift. I paused. Let it land. I spent years trying to become the kind of daughter someone like my father could be proud of. But the real shift happened when I stopped performing and started owning. You don't have to prove yourself to people who refuse to see you. A few heads nodded. A few eyes welled. Some legacies are worth breaking. And sometimes, the most revolutionary thing you can do is walk away. Not in anger. In clarity. The applause didn't matter. But the stillness after did. In that moment, I wasn't someone's daughter. I wasn't someone's disappointment. I was my own damn architect. A month later, an envelope arrived. No return address. The handwriting on the front was sharp. Angular. Familiar in the way only something long avoided can be. Inside was the same photo. The one I had given him. On the back, in neat block letters, he'd written. I didn't forget that day. I tried to. Because it scared me, how much I loved that version of you. You deserved more than I gave. I'm sorry. No signature. No love, Dad. Just that. I stared at it for a long time. Not crying. Just, still. Then I folded the photo and placed it gently in the same drawer where I used to keep every disappointing birthday card. Every half-hearted holiday note. Every apology that never came. But this time, it didn't go there as another wound. It went there as a marker of something that had finally stopped bleeding. Because healing doesn't always look like a breakthrough. Sometimes, it doesn't come in time. Sometimes, it doesn't come in the words you waited decades for. Sometimes, it only arrives after you've stopped needing it. That's what healing looks like. It's not loud. It's not cinematic. It's a Tuesday morning where you drink your coffee and don't think of him. It's a voicemail you don't feel obligated to return. It's choosing silence, and realizing it doesn't mean defeat. It means peace. 3 months after the gala, I spoke at a small university near Evanston. A mentorship panel. Girls in engineering. The turnout was small, but the room felt full. Afterward, a student, no older than 19, approached me. Big glasses. Shy voice. Anxious fingers clutching her notebook. How did you know? She asked. When it was time to stop trying to win your dad's approval? I smiled. Not out of bitterness. But from a place she hadn't arrived at yet. I didn't, I said. I just woke up one day and realized. I already had mine. That night, back in my apartment, I opened a new frame. Slipped the photo inside. Hung it on the wall. Not as a plea for recognition. But as proof of everything I survived without it. Because sometimes, the greatest legacy isn't the one you're handed. It's the one you build yourself, piece by piece, when no one is watching. And sometimes, the most extraordinary launch is the one that happens quietly. Alone. And still, it soars.